Hey guys, this is Matt Core from Ctrl+Paint.com, and today we're going to talk about getting organized for digital painting. And I'm just going to throw it out there, I'm not a very organized person, so really it's taken some years for me to figure out techniques that work for me. And I'm going to start by showing you this sketchbook. So what is this? It is something very familiar, I'm sure you have one. We just do basic, quick drawings in here. But for the sake of the series, let's think of this as a system. It's a system because it has one way you operate it. You open it up, you turn the page, and you start drawing. And it's really nice because that's an easy system. Then the upside of this system is that all of your drawings stay in the same place. You can sort of carry the book around with you and you have all the drawings that you've made so far. And it's very easy to see what you made first because those are the beginning, and then the ones you made later are at the end. Now for me, I use my sketchbook primarily for making thumbnail sketches. And so to make thumbnailing easier for me, I actually made myself a little bit of a guide. So I keep this inside of my sketchbook. It's made on sort of heavier cardstock. And I made sure when I cut these holes that they were exactly 16:9 aspect ratio. And what that means is when I trace these onto my sketchbook paper, it gives me a nice 16:9 thumbnail. Now, is this complicated? No, not at all. It was just recognizing something that I did with sketchbooks, and then I built myself a tool to make that part easier. So really what this empowers me to do is make more thumbnails. Because if I can lower that barrier to entry, if I can make it easier to make a very precise 16:9 thumbnail, it turns out what I do is just make more thumbnails. So we're going to take this idea, the idea of recognizing something you do and that's good for your art, and then to build yourself a system to make it both more organized and also less work. Because those are two good things, and if we can be smart about the system, we'll just get more done. Now, the very first thing you can do inside of Photoshop is to think about making document presets. So what this means is when I go to the New Document menu, there are some basic presets here, like paper sizes. But you can see in mine, I've made an extra list because there are some document shapes that I just use over and over and over. For instance, when I make a thumbnail for the Ctrl+Paint blog, this is the aspect ratio. So let's see what other ones I have here. A very common one for me is 1920 by 1080 pixels. That is a 16:9 aspect ratio, and it happens to be what people call 1080 HD. But I often work at higher resolution. So what I made was a 1080 times 2. So this is literally just take both those numbers, multiply them by 2, and this is what you're left with. And this grid you're seeing, that's not actually part of the document. This is a plain blank white document. But what this allows me to do is just immediately get into making artwork. I don't need a calculator, I don't need to remember anything, it's just there ready for me. Now getting back to that idea of my thumbnail guide for the sketchbook, this is essentially the Photoshop version. So here I've made myself a document which I call thumbnail 16:9, and this is a template. The idea is I made this once and I spent a long time getting it just right, and then I never have to make it again. So let's take a look at what we have in here. We have a layer group that's called formatting, which we can toggle on and off. Inside of that, we have the text. So if we don't want letters, we can hide those. I've made it such that the art already has a mask on it, which means if I paint here, it can only go inside of these thumbnails, which is just right. And then I have a background plate separate from that. So here the default is white, but I also have other different shades if you wanted to quickly see what this would look like over different background colors. So what this does is allows me to make precise thumbnails that happen to be exactly 16:9 aspect ratio without any fuss. I open this document up, save a new version, and then just start my project. And then once I'd made one of them, I just sort of duplicated that document and modified it a little bit. So here I have the same general idea, but they are 1x1 squares. Whenever I'm making things like game icons, it's really nice to have sort of square aspect ratio thumbnails. And then this one here has a little workspace at the bottom. So I've got my 3 thumbnails up top. Maybe this was my second round. So I started with a bunch of thumbnails, then I picked 3 I liked, and then I just want to have a little workspace to develop ideas that aren't necessarily exactly camera shots. Maybe they're details or close-up views, who knows? So this is a very basic system for working inside of Photoshop. And so for the rest of this mini-series, we're going to take a look at other systems, both inside and outside of Photoshop, and how they might make you more organized, faster, and just get to the artwork. So stay tuned, and thanks for coming to the site, guys.